Hey everyone, tonight we're drifting far back to a time when Baghdad's nights didn't sleep, when the moonlit streets were alive with 1,000 whispers and the scent of spices curled through alleyways like a living thing. Tonight, we wander through the forgotten night markets of ancient Baghdad. Now, quick reality check. You probably wouldn't survive an hour in those crowded, torch-lit bazaars. Pickpockets, camel traffic jams, and questionable street food would do you in before dawn. So be glad you're safe in bed. So before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And don't forget to share your city and local time in the comments. I love seeing who's awake with me. Now turn off your lights, let that fan hum softly in the corner, and let's begin tonight's journey. You roll your shoulder, easing into the warmth of your blanket as your mind drifts eastward over deserts, minarets, and rivers until you touch down on a worn cobblestone path leading straight into Baghdad's heart, centuries ago, under the rule of the Abbasid Caliphate. It's the golden age of knowledge, trade, and yes, scandalous gossip exchanged under lanterns flickering in the night breeze. It's late evening, and you push through a tight alley squeezed between mud brick walls. Merchants chant prices in Arabic, Persian, and languages you can't even place. A cat, plump from stolen lamb scraps, darts under a stall where skewers of meat sizzle on open coals. You breathe in coriander, sweat, and rosewater perfume mingling in the air like a potion. Historically, Baghdad's night markets weren't just about food or trinkets. They were vital social hubs, secret meetings, poetry recitals, or even a quick bribe to a local guard. Some historians argue whether these gatherings were officially sanctioned or tolerated by overworked city watchmen who preferred sipping tea to cracking down on late-night gossipers. You pause at a fabric stall. Silks shimmer in moonlight, dyed in shades so vivid you almost suspect sorcery, or, more plausibly, clever Persian dyers. A trader with gold teeth persuades a woman to feel a bolt of indigo silk, boasting it was dipped 7 times in indigo vats, a technique many scholars still debate. Did they really have such deep, color-fast dyes, or is it all a salesman's tale? Somewhere behind you, a group of teenage boys burst into laughter. They've pocketed a handful of candied nuts from an old vendor who pretends not to notice. You can't help but smile. Petty theft here is practically a coming-of-age ritual. There's a rumor, because of course there is, that somewhere behind these orderly stalls lurks a black market for banned scrolls and scandalous poetry. The caliph's scribes pretend to hate it, but secretly they line up to buy the very verses they condemn by day. You step aside to avoid a donkey laden with ceramic jars of rose syrup. A drop spills onto your sandal. Sticky sweetness glues your foot to the dusty stone. You wonder how many flavors ancient Baghdad experimented with. Records mention rose, saffron, and a suspiciously extravagant pistachio ice imported from Persia's mountain snow. Speaking of which, and did you know Baghdad once had an underground system of ice storage? It's true. They packed snow into deep wells and insulated it with straw to preserve ice for royal feasts. Historians still bicker over how efficient this method was, or if it was more of an elite vanity project. A loud voice snaps your attention back. A storyteller has perched on a wooden crate near a tea stand. A circle forms around him as he spins a tale of gin haunting the riverbanks, stealing fishermen's nets. A child clutches his father's robe, wide-eyed. You sip sweet tea from a chipped ceramic cup, half listening, half floating in this timeless night. Somewhere far down the market, a lute's gentle notes trickle through the stalls, weaving with laughter and the clink of brass cups. You follow it absent-mindedly, your feet sticky, your senses warm and buzzing like a moth circling an oil lamp. If you thought modern nightlife was wild, well, you'd probably last 20 minutes here, and that's being generous. You weave deeper into the labyrinth of lanterns and voices, where the night thickens with secrets that only a city like ancient Baghdad could brew. Here, each crooked alley promises a new scandal or miracle, depending on who you ask, and whether your purse is still in your belt by dawn. A man with ink-stained fingers catches your eye. He sits cross-legged behind a small table littered with parchment scraps and pots of ink. He's a calligrapher for hire, offering to pen letters, draft marriage contracts, or ghostwrite an apology to your wife for staying out so late. Historical records mention how Baghdad's literacy rate soared during this period. Even common merchants paid scribes like this one to keep up appearances. Still, some scholars question whether that high literacy was exaggerated by court poets eager to impress their caliphs. The calligrapher smirks at you, teeth faintly stained with cardamom tea. He whispers about a secret poem he can write, verses so risque the city censors would dunk him in the Tigris if they caught wind of it. He winks, promising a discount for a traveler as handsome as you. You laugh, declining, and move along before you part ways with your last copper coin. Past him, you find yourself surrounded by spice merchants. Mounds of cinnamon bark, cumin seeds, and frankincense glitter under torchlight. One spice dealer gestures wildly, claiming his peppercorns arrived fresh from India by caravan just last week. Considering how treacherous the journey was, thieves, sandstorms, taxes at every oasis, it's a small miracle these spices ever made it here at all. Some historians argue over just how far Baghdad's trade routes truly stretched. Did they really reach China's Tang dynasty directly, or mostly rely on middlemen? The debate goes on in dusty university halls even now. A sudden wave of laughter crashes over the murmur of haggling voices. You spot a street performer balancing a brass tray on his nose while reciting lines from a satirical poem mocking local officials. Public mockery was a risky business, but Baghdad's night crowds adored a clever fool. And hey, who doesn't love a bit of political roast before bed? Just don't try this at your next work meeting. You'll likely be escorted out faster than this man can drop his tray. Near the edge of the market, you notice a row of stalls selling amulets and talismans. Traders swear their carved stones can ward off jinn or bring fertility to newlyweds. One old woman grabs your wrist and presses a brass coin into your palm, muttering a charm for safe passage through the night. You thank her, pocketing the coin mostly out of politeness, but in a city where stories of jinn slipping into water jars or whispering secrets through keyholes float freely, you're not entirely dismissing her protection either. A soft breeze ruffles your hair as you drift towards a lantern maker's stall. Hundreds of paper lanterns sway gently overhead, casting waltzing shadows on the ground. The maker, eyes half closed in a doze, snores quietly behind his glowing handiwork. Some say these lanterns symbolized hope and enlightenment, mirroring Baghdad's reputation as a beacon of knowledge. Others argue they were purely decorative, a way for merchants to flaunt wealth. In true historian fashion, the debate is endless, and neither side likes to admit the other has a point. Your stomach rumbles. The scent of flatbread baked fresh on a clay tandoor teases you closer to a baker's stand. The vendor flips a disc of dough with practiced flicks of his wrist, sprinkling sesame seeds on top just before it kisses the glowing walls of the oven. You bite into a piece, warm, nutty, slightly smoky, and think, modern pizza crust, meet your older, wiser cousin. A little girl giggles as she feeds scraps to a scruffy dog lurking behind the baker's stall. It's a wholesome moment in a city that never quite sleeps, where rumors, poetry, and the smell of spice form a lullaby softer than any silk pillow in the caliph's palace. And yet, under this gentle hum of laughter and trade, you sense something else. A whisper of hush-hush deals in shadowed corners, a hint that tonight's market is more than meets the eye. Are those crates really packed with pepper, or is someone smuggling Persian manuscripts that would scandalize the court? You tuck the last crumb of bread into your mouth, brushing off flour from your fingers. Somewhere ahead, drums begin to beat, low and steady, pulling you deeper into Baghdad's sleepless maze. You follow the drums, soft at first, then louder, then thumping against your ribs like a heartbeat trying to escape. They lead you to a wider square, an open courtyard surrounded by archways draped with colorful rugs and embroidered curtains that flap lazily in the night breeze. The air here hums different, thicker somehow. Conversations hush as you step closer. It's here that Baghdad's night truly breathes its secrets. A ring of people gathers around a trio of musicians, a drummer, a reed flutist, and a singer with a voice so smooth it might slip into your dreams later tonight, uninvited. They perform a tale of lovers parted by war, a story older than any brick in these walls. It's said that during Baghdad's golden age, such courtyard concerts were common, a chance for neighbors and travelers to share tears and laughter long after sunset. Some scholars argue whether the poets behind these songs were rebels or loyalists. Some verses hint at political dissent buried in love metaphors. But as usual, no one agrees for certain. Not then, not now. You find a spot to sit cross-legged on a woven mat that scratches lightly against your ankles. Beside you, an old man with one eyebrow thicker than the other chuckles between sips of rose sherbet. He offers you a clay cup, sticky cold and fragrant. You accept, letting the floral sweetness soothe your throat, wash down the dust of the crowded alleyways. Behind the music, shady figures slip in and out of the curtains lining the courtyard's edges. A quick flash of silver coins, a whispered threat, a hurried laugh. You know better than to stare too long. In Baghdad's night markets, discretion was sometimes the only thing standing between a carefree evening and an unplanned swim in the Tigris, courtesy of someone's hired goons. As the singer's final note trembles into silence, you rise, sandals whispering against the warm stone. Your feet guide you back through a narrower passage, lanterns bobbing overhead like patient fireflies. Here, the market changes face again. Stalls shrink, voices hush, deals sharpen. You come upon a young man hunched over a chessboard painted directly onto the ground. He challenges passers-by for coins, bragging he once beat a court vizier's cousin's tutor, or something equally dubious. Curious, you crouch down, watching him flick a pawn across the board with the smug grin of Baghdad's self-appointed grandmaster. Records suggest that chess arrived in Baghdad around the 7th century, quickly becoming the intellectual pastime of poets, generals, and street hawks alike. Some historians claim the game's spread was the mark of high culture. Others say it distracted too many scholars from actual work. Either way, you know you'd lose to this kid in under 5 moves. A sudden crash breaks your concentration. 2 stallholders shout over a shattered jar of pickled lemons. Yellow shards roll under your feet. They bicker in Arabic so fast you catch only curses, and the word mother thrown around a few times, which you suspect isn't meant literally. Nearby, a woman with henned hands clicks her tongue, muttering that men have always had the brains of donkeys when money is involved. You can't help but grin at the universal truth of it. Moving on, you drift past a tiny tea house wedged into a dead-end alley. You slip inside, pushed by curiosity and the irresistible perfume of mint leaves steeping in bronze kettles. The place is barely bigger than a cupboard, but packed with men hunched over low tables, arguing philosophy between sips. Baghdad, after all, wasn't just the city of merchants. It was the city of thinkers. Some nights, debates raged till dawn about the nature of love, the fate of empires, or whether cats were indeed better conversationalists than people. For the record, you agree with the cat lovers. A passing server bumps your elbow, nearly spilling your tea. He apologizes with a grin too wide to be entirely innocent, probably fishing for a tip. You drop a coin into his pocket anyway, feeling generous under the soft weight of the night. Out in the alley again, you lean against a warm wall, feeling the faint thrum of music, laughter, and scandal swirling behind you. Above, the moon watches, a silent guardian over Baghdad's forbidden, forgiven, and forgotten stories. Did you think you'd just stroll through a spice bazaar and call it a night? Oh no. We haven't even scratched the surface of what lurks beyond these lanterns. You push off the wall and breathe deep, letting the echo of drums and the ghost of mint tea linger on your tongue as you slip back into Baghdad's veins. The night market thins here, trading its playful chaos for something more hushed, a corridor where only certain souls dare wander after the moon climbs high. You tread carefully, sandals muffled on a narrow stretch paved with broken tiles and forgotten prayers. A soft hiss draws your eye to a doorway barely lit by a dying oil lamp. Inside, figures crouch over tiny heaps of powdered spices, weighing them on bronze scales so delicate a desert breeze could tip them. But these aren't saffron merchants. Here, among the reputable sellers, lurk peddlers of remedies, some real, most dangerous. A passing whisper calls them atars, yet everyone knows some are closer to alchemists or poisoners. Records from the time hint at Baghdad's famed House of Wisdom, having a quiet back door into these corners, scholars slipping out to buy forbidden herbs for experiments too risky under the caliph's watchful eyes. Some historians dismiss this as scandalous rumor. Others find traces of such dealings in scribbled marginalia and suspiciously charred notebooks buried in old libraries. A vendor spots you staring and crooks a finger, beckoning you closer with a grin full of secrets. You pretend fascination, nodding politely as he rattles off promises. A powder for sleeplessness, an oil for impossible love, a paste to cure betrayal. You doubt any of it works, but the charm of his pitch makes you linger until another customer elbows you aside, a thin man with eyes too bright to belong entirely to the waking world. You slip back out, pulse steady, but your curiosity roaring. Baghdad's scholars wrote countless treatises on astronomy and philosophy, but in the alleys where the stars can't be seen, folk wisdom rules, and no book dares record it. Deeper in, the air cools suddenly. You step into a courtyard where water trickles from a marble fountain cracked by time. Around it, a cluster of gamblers squat on embroidered rugs, moving dice carved from bone. Their curses and cheers rise and fall like the river tide. Gambling was technically forbidden under stricter rulers, yet here it flourished in every shadow. Historians still argue whether this defiance was tolerated bribery or a simple impossibility to police. Either way, the dice clatter, coins trade hands, and the city pretends not to notice. One player spots you watching and laughs, patting the empty rug beside him. You crouch, feeling the rug's worn threads through your fingertips, and politely decline his offer to bet your sandals against his luck. Good choice. You'd leave barefoot and humiliated within 5 rolls. A passing courtesan drifts by, her anklets chiming like distant bells. She tosses you a teasing smile, her kohl-lined eyes promising stories you're far too polite or too broke to hear tonight. Courtesans in Baghdad were more than companions. Many were poets, musicians, and bearers of scandalous tales that even the House of Wisdom couldn't preserve. Some modern historians bicker about whether they shaped the city's poetry more than its respectable scribes. Frankly, you suspect the answer is yes. You stand brushing dust from your knees and follow a side alley lined with shuttered stalls. Here, the city's heartbeat grows softer, traded for whispers behind heavy doors. Rumors swirl about secret debate clubs hidden in abandoned bathhouses, where radical thinkers dissect religion and politics until sunrise threatens to expose them. No paper trail exists, naturally, but hints survive in coded poems and stories told in hushed voices generations later. You pause, resting under an arched gate carved with floral patterns that survived centuries of sandstorms. As you catch your breath, a pack of stray cats weaves around your ankles, tails flicking your calves. In a city teeming with human intrigue, these cats rule the streets at night. Some old men still swear they carry the souls of poets who died with verses unsung. You scratch one behind the ear, earning a royal purr for your tribute. You grin to yourself, a grin no historian can footnote, and slip back into the winding dark. Tonight, you're neither scholar nor tourist. You're a ghost among Baghdad's ghosts, free to witness secrets that would embarrass the city's proudest scrolls. The deeper you wander, the more the air hums with something unrecorded, raw, and deliciously human. You slip further down the crooked spine of the night market's shadow, a stretch where lanterns flicker less frequently and footsteps sound louder than they should. Here, Baghdad's polished courtyards and scholarly debates surrender to the pulse of flesh, risk, and a fair bit of well-dressed sin. Your toes brush against a stray fig rolling across the alley, You almost slip, catching yourself on a doorframe carved with an old family crest. You wonder how many noble houses funded these forgotten corners with hush money, paying to keep their heirs' indiscretions buried under incense and laughter. A narrow archway leads you into what feels like an indoor garden gone feral. Vines choke stone pillars. A cracked mosaic floor peeks through creeping moss. At the center, oil lamps float in shallow ceramic bowls, casting pools of gold across silk cushions scattered without care. The air tastes of clove smoke and something sharper you can't name. A man lounges by a hookah pipe as if gravity bores him. He flicks ashes onto a plate and asks if you want a story or a secret. You raise an eyebrow and he chuckles. Fair warning, both will cost you. A giggle from the far side breaks the hush. A pair of musicians warm up on a kanun and a drum, testing rhythms they'll play once the crowd forgets decency for the night. You find a corner cushion, sinking halfway to the marble beneath. An attendant drifts by, offering pomegranate seeds dusted with salt and pepper, a local snack, tangy and sharp. A few seeds burst on your tongue, sticky juice seeping into your thoughts as you watch the garden breathe with hushed conversations and stolen kisses. Historically, gatherings like this, salons they called them, blurred every line. Poetry, politics, and pleasure mingled so thoroughly that censors couldn't clamp down without risking the wrath of powerful hosts. Some historians argue whether these salons birthed revolutionary ideas that trickled into official policy, or whether they were simply Baghdad's guilty little pleasure. As always, the answer is probably both. Your neighbor, a man with an ear half missing, leans in to tell you he once saw the vizier's youngest son recite love verses here while drunk on rose liquor. Scandalous then, delightful gossip now. He cackles, revealing 2 teeth exactly where you'd expect 4. You laugh too, because you're not sure how else to respond. You rise, leaving behind the scent of hookah and the soft lies traded on silk cushions. Back in the corridor, the night feels rawer now, the air cooler on your skin. Somewhere behind a wooden door, you hear dice rattle. Yes, more gambling. Baghdad was nothing if not consistent in its vices. You pass a window half covered by a linen drape. A flicker of candlelight escapes, catching your eye. Inside, a scribe copies verses by lamplight, his lips moving silently over each word. You know that many scribes by day doubled as ghostwriters, for poets too scandalous to sign their own names. Some poems survived the centuries, some vanished, leaving only rumors scratched into the backs of old ledgers. Scholars today still debate whether certain erotic odes belong to well-known court poets or cunning courtesans who used scribes to mask their genius. You lean in closer, but the scribe senses you. He snuffs his lamp with a flick, and the window goes dark. Secrets cost money, friend. You drift toward the river's faint roar. Baghdad's lifeblood, the Tigris, curls just beyond the market's edge. You follow the scent of damp clay and reeds until your sandals meet the stone bank. Here, clusters of lovers whisper beneath cypress trees while fishermen sleep in their boats, nets drifting like ghostly hands below the surface. A soft splash. You squint and catch a figure gliding a shallow skiff past the sleepy boats. It's said that certain messages or certain people cross the river at night, when crossing a bridge meant questions from guards. Some historians dismiss this as romantic nonsense, but old fishermen will swear by moonlight that a clever boatman could ferry anything or anyone for the right coin. You sit on the bank, fingers trailing in the river's cool breath. The city behind you hums and rustles like a giant creature rolling over in its sleep. You take a deep breath, tasting oil lamps, sweet smoke, rose liquor, and ancient gossip on the back of your tongue. You chuckle softly. If modern nightlife makes you yawn, Baghdad's sleepless heart would dance circles around you and still steal your purse before dawn. You stand, brushing river mist from your fingertips, and turn back toward the labyrinth of whispers. The moon has shifted just enough to tilt shadows where you don't expect them, but you've learned by now. Baghdad's night market is as alive as any beating heart, always changing its alleyways when you think you know the way out. You step into a street so narrow your elbows nearly brush the mud brick walls. From an open window above, a woman laughs, sharp, unbothered, as if mocking the quiet city below. You wonder who she is. A merchant's daughter locked away but craving the night air, or perhaps an entertainer winding down after charming some nobleman's purse open. You'll never know. Baghdad loves to keep its mysteries half hidden. Ahead, the passage widens into a dim courtyard where oil lamps swing gently, chained to stone pillars etched with verses of the Quran. Don't let the holy script fool you. Behind these pillars, debates spark hotter than the coals in the hookah dens you just left. You pause, drawn by a ring of students seated cross-legged on dusty rugs, a man in their center with a beard like a spilled inkpot. He gestures wildly, describing the shape of the universe with his hands. His voice, low but urgent, dares gravity to hush him. Historians drool over tales of Baghdad's open-air lectures, where astronomy, medicine, and philosophy tangle together under starlight. Some professors say this is where modern thought sprouted roots. Skeptics say the drunken poets behind them deserve more credit. Naturally, the argument has lasted 1,000 years, and no one has won yet. You squat on the fringe, catching snatches of his lecture, planets moving in perfect harmony, the moon's pull on the river's breath, how the stars could hint at a sultan's downfall if only one read them correctly. You grin. Baghdad never did fear mixing faith and curiosity. But lean in too close, and tomorrow's sunrise might find you accused of heresy. Best to listen from the shadows. A cough distracts you. Behind the students, a cluster of women huddle around a peddler displaying tiny glass vials. You drift closer. He promises perfume distilled from orange blossoms stolen, so he claims, from a rival merchant's private garden. Each drop, he swears, guarantees a lover's sigh. One woman snorts, flicking a coin at him just to shut him up. You catch her eye, and she winks as if to say, "Men and their magic potions. Adorable, isn't it?" You slip away again, belly full of laughter you didn't know you carried. The deeper you go, the more the market unravels its final masks. A sudden hush. You freeze, half step into an archway leading to what looks like an abandoned madrasa. But inside, lanterns flicker against mosaics half-eaten by age. Low murmurs rise from a circle of people wrapped in cloaks, too fine for a back-alley meeting. You catch phrases about taxes, troop movements, someone's cousin bribing an official. This, if the old tales are true, is Baghdad's black spine. Politics whispered, where eavesdroppers might vanish for good. Some modern scholars claim these conspiracies are exaggerations, bedtime stories for bored historians. Others swear secret deals shaped entire caliphates behind doors like these. You stand perfectly still, just long enough to feel your pulse in your ears. Then, instinct louder than curiosity, you step back. Some secrets are sweeter left to rumor. You retreat down a side lane where the city's heartbeat calms again. Stray dogs watch you pass, tails sweeping dust from the stones. Somewhere overhead, a wooden balcony creaks, lovers exchanging words you're not meant to hear. Your sandals crunch something soft. You glance down, rose petals scattered carelessly across the path, a trail left by a merchant showing off for a courtesan, maybe, or a poet hoping the city itself will listen to his love. Either way, the petals stick to your feet, tiny reminders that even in the darkest corners, Baghdad refuses to be all shadow. A sudden breeze cuts through the heat, a rare mercy in this dry maze. You close your eyes, letting it carry away the spice and smoke clinging to your hair. Somewhere behind you, the market giggles. It knows you can't leave yet. You drift onward, petals still clinging to your soles like shy companions. The deeper you go, the more the night presses against your skin, not menacing exactly, but heavy with the sense that every brick and every breeze remembers stories you could never fit on a library shelf. A sudden burst of laughter spills from a tavern whose wooden sign swings on a single, rusty hinge. You duck inside, drawn by curiosity and the promise of something, maybe a drink, maybe a story, maybe trouble wearing a friendly grin. Inside, the ceiling is so low, you have to tilt your head. Lanterns flicker behind stained glass, painting the room in puddles of ruby and emerald light. Merchants squat around rough tables, slapping dice cups and arguing over who cheated last. In one corner, a musician hums to himself while plucking at an oud, tuning each string by ear and cursing under his breath when it snaps. A squat man behind the counter eyes you. Without asking, he slides you a cup of cloudy date wine that smells like overripe honey and regret. You sip cautiously, sweet, sharp, with the faint tang of something that might knock you sideways if you're not careful. Records hint that Baghdad's more pious rulers frowned on alcohol, but everyone knows that one rule about vice: tell people no, and they'll simply invent more creative ways to say yes. You catch snippets of conversation around you. A caravan master boasting he smuggled silk through a war zone, a would-be poet reciting verses so dreadful even the flies ignore him, and an old woman cackling about a stolen jewel hidden somewhere no honest man would ever look. You raise an eyebrow at that. She sees you, winks, and vanishes into the smoke swirling near the hearth. Back outside, the wind feels braver now, tugging your hair and cooling the sheen on your brow. You find yourself on a street wider than the rest, where clay lanterns flicker like a breadcrumb trail leading you deeper into Baghdad's soft underbelly. Here, a row of scribes for hire squat, cross-legged in front of tiny writing desks. Each holds a brush or reed pen poised above paper so thin you can almost see through it. One scribe, a boy who can't be more than 16, dips his brush in ink made from soot and pomegranate rind. He offers to write you a love poem, guaranteed to win a heart or break one, depending how you read it aloud. You almost say yes. Instead, you thank him, leaving behind only the warmth of your grin. Beside the scribes, a small circle of listeners gathers around a blind storyteller. He sits on a low stool, his milky eyes staring at a place you can't see. His voice weaves an old tale about a merchant who sold his soul to a jinn for endless riches, but forgot to ask for time to enjoy them. Even now, scholars argue whether such jinn legends were warnings about greed or cautionary tales spun by merchants to explain sudden ruin. Either way, the audience eats it up, leaning closer with every twist of the tale. You shuffle closer, caught in the current of words, until the final line curls into silence. A few coins clink into the old man's battered tin bowl. You add yours, feeling a tug of gratitude that he just gave you a dream to slip in your pocket for later. A sudden cry snaps you back. Down the lane, an argument spills into the street. A food vendor and a guard waving his spear like a scolding finger. You catch the gist. The vendor refused to pay extra protection money. You shake your head. Some corners of Baghdad never change, whether watched by a caliph or left to police themselves. You slip past before the guard notices your foreign eyes lingering too long. You've learned Baghdad's secrets are generous, but her gossip costs more than gold if you look at the wrong scandal for too long. Past the argument, you stumble into a small square. Here, a single palm tree sways lazily beside a public well. Women in long robes draw water, balancing clay jars on hips practiced by generations of desert life. They gossip low and fast about a neighbor's unfaithful husband, a merchant who promised too much credit, a cousin who ran away with a scholar twice her age. Some historians say these well-side chats were the true veins of information in Baghdad, better than any official spy network. You smile at the thought, kings in marble halls, yet queens of rumor stand right here with wet hands and clay jugs, deciding which truth survives the sunrise. A soft fatigue settles in your bones. Not enough to end the night, just enough to remind you you're only human in a city that pretends to never sleep. You lean your back against the well's cool stone, listening as the gossips fades into a lullaby only Baghdad could hum, part river, part laughter, part secrets that cling like desert dust to your skin. For a heartbeat, you think you could drift off right here, under this lone palm, but the city is far from finished with you. You push away from the well and let your feet decide the next path. They lead you down a lane, barely wide enough for two donkeys to pass side by side. The walls here lean toward each other, whispering so closely you swear they share jokes you'll never hear. Halfway down this quiet artery, you come upon a doorway framed by blue tiles cracked with age. A soft light flickers behind a silk curtain. You slip inside without knocking. No one here knocks. The air hits you first, rose oil, sandalwood, and the faint, sharp tang of ink. Shelves line the walls, sagging under scrolls, parchment, and clay tablets half buried under cloth bundles. This is one of Baghdad's hidden reading rooms, not the grand libraries that poets brag about in letters to faraway sultans, but the hush-hush kind. Here, banned manuscripts rest beside cookbooks and scandalous poems wrapped in linen like forbidden fruit. Historians argue whether such secret libraries truly existed or were the fantasies of nostalgic scholars longing for a freer past. But tonight, you stand inside one, breathing its proof. An old man sits cross-legged at a low table, his beard dusted white like fresh snow on a desert dune. He doesn't look up, just mutters, "Take a scroll, leave a scroll." You nod, a silent pact. You run your fingers along brittle parchment, stopping at an illustrated folio depicting constellations shaped like mythical beasts. It's clear, even in dim lamplight, Baghdad's passion for astronomy never slept, not even when the caliph's spies did. You roll the scroll gently back into its sleeve and leave behind a stray slip of paper you pocketed earlier, a cheap love poem scribbled by the riverside bard. Fair trade, you think, stepping back into the night. Outside, the air feels colder, or maybe you're just finally noticing it under the sweat on your brow. The market's pulse has slowed, many stalls have shuttered, their canvas flaps snapping gently in the breeze. But not all hearts beat to the same drum. Somewhere you hear music again, a single drum, steady and deep, calling the restless ones for a final gathering before dawn breaks Baghdad's spell. You follow it, passing a shadowy courtyard where three boys practice swordplay with sticks, each pretending to be a hero from half-remembered tales. They shout out names of long-dead warriors, some real, some invented on the spot. A girl perched on a wall above them laughs, correcting their stories when they get the hero's fate wrong. Some scholars dismiss these playground legends as childish nonsense, but ask any grown merchant. Every risk he takes is half dream, half memory of a hero's brave last stand. You drift on until the drumbeat swells into song. You find yourself back where it all began, a wide square pulsing with bodies, lanterns, and a final fleeting surge of energy before the city surrenders to dawn. In the middle, dancers move like shadows set free from the lamps. Men and women circle each other, arms outstretched, feet stomping, silk sleeves catching the glow like tiny fires. You stand at the edge, mesmerized, feeling the drum echo through your ribs, grounding you to this moment and every moment that came before. Someone presses a clay cup into your hand, bitter coffee this time, spiced with cardamom and just enough sugar to convince you you're still awake. You sip, letting its warmth remind your bones they're still needed a little longer. A man beside you, his head wrapped in a patterned scarf, murmurs that once, long ago, caliphs themselves watched these dances in disguise, laughing and clapping with the common folk until dawn betrayed them. Some historians believe this, others roll their eyes at such romantic nonsense. But tonight, here under the floating lanterns, you choose to believe every impossible thing Baghdad whispers in your ear. Your eyelids flutter, the drum slows, the dancers' shadows stretch and fade into the first hesitant blue of morning. Not yet, you promise yourself. Not until the final secret is yours to cradle like an ember. You tilt the last sip of cardamom coffee into your mouth, letting its bite chase off the temptation to drift away where you stand. Around you, the square unwinds, laughter thinning, lanterns flickering out one by one like stars outshone by the stubborn dawn. But you know Baghdad's final secret never hides in the crowd. It waits alone in the folds of the city where only the bravest or the most foolish linger after the drums go silent. You drift from the square, sandals whispering over the first dew, cooling the dust. A stray dog lifts its head from a pile of burlap sacks, eyes blinking sleepily at you as if to ask, "Still awake?" You nod to the animal like an old friend and carry on. Your feet lead you down an alley so narrow your shoulders brush both walls. Here, the scent changes, not rose oil or spiced wine, but old parchment, dry wood, and river mist carried in by the veins of the city's canals. At the alley's end stands a door half rotten, yet stubbornly upright, painted in colors that must once have been royal blue. You push through. Inside, the hush is immediate and absolute, so thick you feel rude just breathing. It's a hidden schoolhouse, once grand, now a ghost, wrapped in cobwebs and cracked tile. Yet in one corner burns a solitary lamp, and under it, a teacher and two sleepy-eyed children bent over a slab of slate, whispering words in a language you can't place at first. Baghdad, even at her grandest, was never just for scholars in palaces or scribes in marble halls. Secret schools like this kept alive dialects and traditions the caliphs couldn't catalog, couldn't censor. Some historians claim it's myth, but when you watch a teacher lean close to trace letters into a child's palm, you know myth often hides the truest truth. The teacher catches your eye, smiles tiredly, and nods toward a pile of brittle scrolls near the wall. You kneel, fingers brushing over centuries. Some are lists of herbs for fevers, others poems to lost lovers, some just scribbles, a father's promise to return, a merchant's debt never repaid, a woman's dream of sailing down the Tigris to a city where no one knows her name. You sit with these ghosts a while, letting them speak in their soft, dusty language. Outside, a rooster crows, a rude reminder that the city's honest daylight is coming whether you're ready or not. Reluctantly, you stand. The teacher lifts a hand in farewell, but says nothing. Words are too heavy here. You slip back into the alley, scroll dust smudged on your fingertips like a secret only you and Baghdad share. You wander the waking streets. Merchants stretch and unpack wares for another day of bartering and gossip. A butcher sharpens his knife on a stone older than the market itself. A girl scrubs yesterday's rose petals off the square's mosaic tiles while humming a tune her grandmother taught her. You pause at the river once more. The Tigris rolls on, indifferent to your footprints along its banks. But maybe, just maybe, it remembers your night the way it remembers so many thousands before you. Historians will argue forever about what Baghdad really was: center of the world, den of vice, cradle of learning, garden of secrets. Let them argue. You know the truth, she is all of it at once, even when the lamps are out. You laugh quietly. If you told anyone you met a whole city in one sleepless night, they'd call you mad. But then again, maybe madness is just another name for staying awake in Baghdad long enough to listen. You take a final breath of the river's cool morning mist, pocket a stray pebble, proof for no one but yourself, and turn away. You leave the river's hush behind, your steps slow now, not from fear, but from that soft, beautiful weariness that comes only after you've tasted every secret a night can offer. Baghdad sighs all around you, the clang of a pot, the bark of a dog, the rustle of a merchant laying out embroidered cloths that still carry the warmth of last evening's whispers. You pause beside an old fig tree, rooted stubbornly in a crack between two crumbling walls. Its branches stretch wide, as if hugging the sky itself. Beneath it, a beggar snores against the trunk, dreams leaking from the corner of his mouth like a lullaby only he can hear. You envy him for a heartbeat, the ease of sleep after a lifetime of forgotten days. As dawn paints the stone streets in ribbons of gold and soft rose, you slip through the final lanes with a mind half here, half drifting behind you to the laughter and smoke and river songs still echoing in your bones. A group of women sweep their doorsteps, flicking yesterday's dust into the gutter with quick, practiced hands. They glance at you, a stranger with tired eyes and secrets under your nails, and nod a greeting. No words needed. Baghdad teaches you silence is sometimes the truest kind of conversation. Near the city's old gate, you rest your palm on a worn slab of marble. Generations of travelers press their hands here too, a ritual promise to carry a piece of Baghdad wherever they wandered next. You smile, palm warm against ancient stone, and swear to do the same. You step through the gate just as the sun crests the horizon, a round, forgiving coin slipped into the sky's open palm. Behind you, Baghdad continues her slow, lazy exhale. New merchants, fresh gossip, and unspoken conspiracies, already weaving through fresh shadows. No historian will write your night exactly as you lived it. They'll argue, doubt, scribble in the margins of leather-bound tomes. Let them. The truth is simpler. You walked her veins, drank her secrets, and now you carry a corner of her sleepless heart tucked under your ribs forever. You exhale. For the first time tonight, your shoulders relax fully. It's time to rest, friend. Now, before your eyelids surrender completely, let your mind drift back to that first lantern flicker, the warm hush of voices bartering cinnamon and silk under a young moon. Feel the river's breath on your cheek, the spice on your tongue, the far-off echo of a drum reminding you that every night somewhere is sleepless, but not yours, not now. Let your breath stretch long and quiet, like the Tigris rolling under an ancient bridge. Let your thoughts soften, crumble like dry parchment, until only calm remains. Picture each alley closing gently behind you, each whisper fading into the hush of dawn. Your body sinks deeper into your blanket. The world outside your door has no secrets tonight. They all stayed behind in Baghdad's stone bones, waiting for the next dreamer brave enough to wander barefoot through moonlight and memory. You've earned this stillness. You're safe, you're warm, and the city's heartbeat can rest inside you without stealing your sleep. So close your eyes. Trust the fan's gentle hum, the softness of your pillow, the quiet promise that you're exactly where you need to be. Hey everyone, tonight we're going to slip beneath the flapping felt of a Mongol jeer, right into the belly of a brewing storm. You're going to sit cross-legged on coarse wool blankets beside a small iron stove, trying to pretend the thunder outside doesn't sound exactly like a dozen war drums coming to ruin your evening. If you think you could handle this without Wi-Fi, hot chocolate, or a sturdy roof, trust me, you'd probably not survive a single night chewing what these nomads did. So before you get too cozy, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now turn off the lights, switch on a fan for that soft hum, and let's begin tonight's journey. You kneel forward, peering into a bubbling pot that smells suspiciously like mutton boiled 4 different times over the same fire. This, my friend, is borts, strips of sun-dried meat that the Mongols packed for long rides and storms alike. When the wind howled across the steppe, families would toss these leathery strips into boiling water, creating a soup so simple yet so vital that you might start questioning your own definition of comfort food. Out there beyond the thick felt walls, the steppe stretches endlessly. The horses, restless from the storm's static charge, shift and snort near the tether line. Inside, you sip the greasy broth, grateful that at least tonight you don't have to ride through the squall. Did you know that Mongols sometimes made a tea called sute tsai? It's salty, brackish, and heavy with butter or sheep fat, nothing like the chamomile you might be cradling now. The butter kept their lips from cracking in the frozen wind. A delightful side effect. It also kept the taste of mutton ever present, no matter what you drank. Cozy, right? As you wipe your lips, you notice a hide pouch hanging from a wooden peg. It's full of dried curds, arul, hard nuggets of milk turned into cheese so stubborn it could outlast an entire winter. You try to bite one and nearly chip a tooth. That's part of the charm. Slow chewing kept boredom at bay when the wind wouldn't let you leave the jeer. Speaking of winds, historians still debate whether these sudden storms shaped Mongol battle tactics. Some claim the warriors read the skies so well they knew when to attack with the wind at their backs, sending arrows farther and confusing enemies with swirling dust. Others say that's just poetic hindsight. Who wouldn't credit the weather for a legendary conquest? You shift closer to the fire, the gusts rattling the wooden poles above. An old woman pokes the embers, humming a tune that has no beginning or end. She offers you a strip of dried intestines, a delicacy you politely nibble. Mongols wasted nothing. If it came off an animal, it became food, rope, clothing, or even a patch for a torn saddle. Outside, the storm rages on, but inside, your eyelids grow heavy. The repetitive clatter of rain unfelt, the burble of soup, and the old woman's tune blur into a single, comforting lullaby. Before you nod off completely, here's a quick chuckle. Imagine explaining to your picky roommate that tonight's dinner is dried meat, boiled for 3 hours, washed down with salty butter tea. Bet they'd love that. Yet in this world, simplicity was survival. And you, tucked into this circle of warmth, have one job. Rest deeply enough to ride again when the sun claws back over the stormy horizon. You stretch your legs under the rough wool blanket, the warmth of the fire sinking into your bones while the wind outside pelts the jeer with icy droplets. It's a night when even the fiercest rider would rather huddle indoors, counting the moments until the storm passes and the plains become friendly again. Tonight's menu won't win any culinary awards, but it might just keep you alive. Next to the pot of borts, a flat iron pan crackles with lumps of dough. These are simple flour cakes called bortsog. Fried in mutton fat, they're chewy, a bit oily, and absolutely perfect for soaking up the greasy soup. You tear one apart, and the steam that escapes carries the smell of smoked meat and distant pastures. Not exactly a croissant, but hey, it sticks to your ribs. A horse snorts outside, offended by a sudden crack of thunder. The oldest man in the Gier barely flinches. He's seen storms so fierce they lifted entire herds and scattered them miles away. He tells you, between mouthfuls of broth, that in the worst weather, Mongols trusted fermented mare's milk, arag, more than water. Fermented milk didn't spoil fast and had a gentle buzz that made being trapped indoors a little less maddening. Think of it as their storm time happy hour. If you've ever doubted the power of fermented drinks, imagine this. Historians still argue if Genghis Khan's men were tougher because they drank more arag than water. Some scholars believe the mild alcohol gave them courage and dulled pain. Others insist it's a myth spun by European travelers who couldn't handle fermented horse milk themselves. Either way, it takes guts, or maybe just cold desperation, to choose sour milk over clean water. You pull your blanket tighter, your stomach now a slow furnace of soup, dough, and dairy. The children of the camp giggle quietly, daring each other to run outside for a moment, only to squeal and leap back in, dripping wet and victorious over the wind for a heartbeat. Meanwhile, an old woman sits beside you, her fingers deftly twisting sinew into a bowstring. Nothing is wasted. After a meal, bones are split for marrow, then carved into tools or strung together to rattle and scare away wolves at night. The marrow itself is rich, spread on hot bread and sprinkled with salt, a treat reserved for warriors and weary travelers. Between gusts of wind, you hear a lull in the conversation. Everyone's eyes droop, even the sharp-eyed hunter who usually sleeps with one hand on his saddle. You settle deeper into the warmth, lulled by the smell of smoke and the closeness of people who know storms like they know their own heartbeat. One last curious tidbit before you drift further. The Mongols sometimes carried dried blood sausages called kazi. Made with horse meat and carefully spiced, these sausages could survive storms, travel, and careless packing. If that grosses you out, remember, your ancestors probably did far stranger things to keep hunger at bay. And here's a giggle to ease that image. Imagine biting into a stick of dried horse sausage in the middle of a blizzard while your horse tries to eat your remaining supply. Sharing is caring, but not when you're down to your last bite. Outside, the wind howls a lullaby that no modern white noise app can match. You yawn, your belly full of ancient resilience, disguised as soup and dough. Your eyelids grow heavier, but the old stories tug you back awake. The Gier creaks and shivers under the pounding rain, but inside, human warmth battles nature in the oldest rivalry known to nomads. You shift, drawing your blanket higher, your ears catching another round of soft conversation, a tale drifting between the crackle of firewood. A grandmother, her voice creased like her palms, recalls how storms sometimes forced entire camps to slaughter a sheep or goat early, rather than risk the animal freezing or starving. In storm seasons, Mongol families butchered carefully, nothing wasted, every piece preserved. The fat went straight into tonight's stew, or was rendered down to coat dried meat, a primitive but effective Tupperware. One old practice might surprise you. They crafted gut pouches, animal stomachs turned into makeshift bags to store soupy leftovers. Imagine your fridge replaced by a bag of tripe dangling over your head. Delicious and horrifying all at once. Scholars scratch their heads over how nomads balanced freshness and spoilage. Some argue gut bacteria did half the work. Others claim the near-constant cold did the rest. As the story settles, a distant thunder roll shakes the ground so gently your toes feel it. You picture warriors curled under the same wool, the same flickering lamplight, licking their hardened cheeks. One hand on a dagger, the other clutching a bowl of soup that smells just like yours. The horses outside stomp and blow steam into the night. If the storm turns worse, a herder will have to dash out, untangle frozen ropes, and drag frightened animals back before they break loose and vanish into the black steppe. You, meanwhile, get to stay here, sinking deeper into the floor, your belly full, your hair scented with wood smoke and rendered fat. Lucky you. Let's not forget the oddball detail. Once in a blue moon, a lucky family might own a goat that produced an absurd amount of milk. They'd brag about this goat the same way you might boast about a car or a fancy gadget. And in the worst storms, the extra milk became quick cheese, butter for salty tea, or just plain boiled and shared to hush a crying child. Some scholars suggest these prized goats were a form of primitive insurance. More milk, more options, more chance to survive the biting wind. Others roll their eyes, pointing out that bragging about a goat is hardly reliable data. Who's right? Well, like most steppe secrets, it probably blew away in the wind. Another grin for you. Mongol kids sometimes chewed on lumps of dried fat for hours like a savory lollipop. So next time you unwrap a caramel at the movies, thank your lucky stars it's not a sheep fat popsicle. The fire dims a shade. Embers crackle softly, lulling you toward a deeper calm. Tonight, you're a silent guest in an ancient world where storms decide what's for dinner and warmth is measured by the closeness of people huddled around a single stubborn flame. A final truth for tonight's Act 1. Survival here isn't about feasting, but about sharing. One bowl passed around, one song hummed softly over the thunder, and the promise that when morning breaks, you'll ride again. No matter how hard the wind blew the night before, rest your head, listen to the last hiss of the kettle, and drift. Your body melts into the woolen bedding as dawn refuses to break. The storm has grown bolder overnight, battering the gyre like a giant's open palm, but you, snug among centuries of survival tricks, barely flinch. Instead, you wake to the soft clang of a ladle striking the iron pot. Breakfast, in Mongol terms, is simply last night's stew given fresh water and maybe, if fortune smiles, a few new scraps of bone and sinew. You drag yourself up, hair mussed, eyes sticky with sleep, and cup your hands around the bowl handed to you. The warmth seeps into your palms faster than any modern mug. The flavor? Familiar by now? Greasy, earthy, almost sweet with the marrow that's melted overnight. Storm or no storm, a Mongol nomad eats simply, thoroughly, and always with one eye on the horizon for the next patch of clear sky. Outside, the horses fidget, their flanks speckled with frost that stubbornly clings despite their thick hides. A young boy, no older than 10, ties a rope around his waist and ventures into the storm to check on the herd. You might gasp at sending a child into weather that would scare a grown city dweller senseless, but here, responsibility is learned younger than the alphabet. While you sip your breakfast, an elder recounts the secret weapon of surviving storms on the steppe: fat, fat, and more fat. Fat is energy. Fat keeps you warm. Fat fuels your muscles when dried meat alone would fail. Mongols prized fat so dearly that a plump sheep was worth more than a lean horse in a rough winter. Some historians claim families used to measure wealth by how many fat animals they could spare during harsh seasons. Others argue this is an exaggeration crafted by over-imaginative foreign visitors, dazzled by the novelty of milk and mutton. A tiny cough of laughter bubbles from your throat. Modern diets preach low fat, no fat, fat-free everything. Here, you'd be laughed out of the camp. If your belly isn't coated in a thin sheen of mutton grease, are you even trying to stay alive? Speaking of odd customs, have you heard of chimek? It's like a curdled version of clotted cream, milk boiled, then left to settle, the thick top layer scooped and eaten like butter or added to teas. In a storm, this dense cream was precious. It melted quickly into any broth, boosting calories without wasting scarce meat. You swipe a finger through your bowl's oily rim, licking it clean. In this world, not a drop is wasted. Even the dog curled near the door will get the leftover bones, once you've cracked and sucked them dry, of course. Meanwhile, a new debate simmers at your side. Did the Mongols really use horse blood as a survival drink during long rides or storms? Some historians say yes. Riders nicked a vein, drained just enough to drink, then patched up the animal and kept riding. Others say it's dramatic myth-making. Yes, the warriors could, but rarely did, preferring dried meat and fermented milk instead. Either way, you can't help but glance at the horses outside and whisper a silent apology on behalf of history. One more giggle for the morning. Picture yourself serving horse blood latte to your friends at brunch. Trendy? Maybe. Popular? Probably not. As the wind howls, you wrap your hands tighter around the empty bowl. In the storm's voice, you hear an old promise. The stronger you eat, the further you ride, and no weather can steal your spirit if your belly stays warm. The wind is merciless, but inside this felt fortress, the day trudges on in the only way Mongol days know how, stoic, practical, and peppered with laughter that defies thunder. After breakfast, you shift closer to the stove, the iron belly now crammed with dried dung and scraps of wood. Fuel is precious on the steppe. Trees are rare, but herds are plenty, so dried manure is the real hero of storm season. You watch the smoke coil upward, tracing the hole at the crowns of the jeer. That smoke carries secrets of battles planned by chieftains, lullabies hummed by mothers, and whispers of who secretly polished off the last piece of fat last night. Every family claims theirs is the best smelling jeer on the plains, and everyone's nose disagrees. You lean back, belly rounding contentedly. A young girl tiptoes past you, balancing a small wooden dish filled with sagan ed, a catch-all term for white foods, cheese, cream, yogurt. These dairy staples bridge the gap when meat is scarce, or the wind refuses to die down long enough for a hunt. Some lumps are rock hard, meant to be sucked on for an hour or two. Others crumble in your mouth, tart and creamy, a pleasant shock after so much greasy broth. While you savor a bite, your host laughs, confessing that during storms, some nomads amuse themselves by betting on who could chew the toughest dried cheese the longest without cracking a tooth. A centuries-old snack and a dental hazard rolled into one. Good luck explaining that to your insurance back home. And here's a morsel for your mind. Historians continue to spar over whether these daily dairy rituals shaped the Mongols' legendary endurance. Some say constant dairy strengthened their bones, explaining why warriors rode for days without rest. Others argue genes, not yogurt, deserve the credit. The debate rages on, fueled by bowls of milk tea and too much fermented cream. A sudden gust rattles the walls so hard that a stack of felt hats topples over, landing in your lap. The laughter that erupts is louder than the storm. It's a reminder that for these nomads, bad weather is a fact of life, not a reason to despair. When the wind grows teeth, they answer with jokes and more tea. Speaking of tea, a large pot of Sute Tsai bubbles again. It's heavier than the one you tasted before. Today they've added more butter, maybe a pinch of salt scooped from a leather pouch near the door. You sip and smack your lips at the oddity of it. Salty tea warms you from the inside, a silky armor against the biting wind. You dare to ask about sweets. Surely you think, a people who craft butter teas and rock cheese must crave sugar now and then. An elder cackles, showing you a shallow bowl of crystal-like sugar lumps, a rare treat traded with distant merchants or captured in raids. 1 piece per child, maybe 2 on a festival day. In storms like this, sugar is hoarded, never squandered. Instead, the natural sweetness in milk and the faint caramelized edges of fried dough cakes scratch that sugary itch just fine. Another curious nugget. Some ancient travelers reported that Mongol camps kept a pot simmering at all times, day and night, storm or sunshine. Into it went scraps of meat, bones, cheese bits, as tea leaves, whatever could feed a tired soul or surprise a midnight stomach rumble. This eternal stew puzzled outsiders, but for nomads, it was both meal and hearth, a bubbling promise that no matter the weather, there was always something warm waiting. A final giggle for now. Imagine bringing a date home and offering them a spoonful from your perpetual pot of leftover everything. Romance might die faster than a goat in a blizzard. Your eyelids droop again, but the storm shows no mercy yet. Somewhere deep in your belly, though, the warmth from milk, fat, and endless laughter settles you for whatever comes next. The storm keeps snarling at the felt walls, but you, well fed and gently steaming with butter tea in your belly, lean back and let the hum of voices blur into a soothing backdrop. It's fascinating how a world this harsh can feel so secure when you're cocooned inside a chair with people who trust the wind but never fear it. Your hands toy with a strip of leftover borts, the dried meat that refuses to go bad no matter how rude the weather. A boy nearby watches you chew, then proudly shows off a pouch dangling from his belt. Inside, more borts, but mixed with dried curds and a pinch of salt, trail rations for when the storm breaks and herders must gallop out to gather strays. While you marvel at his snack on the go, a visiting uncle launches into an old tale about Genghis Khan's secret to storm survival: patience and planning. The Khan supposedly stocked enormous tent cities with dried foods and herds positioned along his warpaths, so his armies could ride light but never starve. Some historians nod in agreement, citing ancient ledgers and travelers' logs. Others call it legend polished into fact, an overblown detail meant to terrify enemies more than feed soldiers. You nod politely and lick the last crumbs from your fingers. Practical or mythical, you decide it doesn't really matter when your next meal is guaranteed by the fat bag tied up near the stove. Next, someone brings out a bowl of urum, clotted cream scraped from boiled milk, sweet and dense. It's spread on leftover bortsog or just spooned straight into the mouth. You're handed a taste and try to hide your eyes rolling back in bliss. Storm food can be humble or decadent, depending on the herd's health and the luck of recent grazing. Tonight, you're living like a Khan, minus the silk robe and battle standard. A sudden hush falls over the Guir as the wind dips low enough for everyone to hear the horses' restless whinnies. Riders exchange looks. If the herd spooks in this gale, It'll scatter across miles, and finding every horse could take days. An older cousin shrugs into a thick coat, wraps a fur hat tight, and vanishes through the flap door. A breath later, a draft of icy air swirls in behind him, nipping at your ankles before it's bullied back by the hot stove. The hush lifts when the children start an impromptu game of knuckle bones, shagai. They flick the little bones with surprising precision, squealing whenever one flips to its rarest side. You watch, amused, then realize that these same bones, when boiled with scraps and herbs, could become a nourishing broth if the storm lingers too long. Play now, eat later. Resourcefulness turned into a childhood pastime. For a tickle of your curiosity, some scholars still argue whether Mongol families truly carried so many dairy treats when on the move, or if stationary winter camps were the real dairy factories. The debate endures like the wind, loud, repetitive, and guaranteed to pop up at every history conference worth its salt. Speaking of salt, there's never enough of it in a nomad's pouch. Storms make trade routes unpredictable, so families hoard lumps of rock salt wrapped in hide. This salt flavors tea, preserves meat, and occasionally gets ground between stones until enough sprinkles to season an entire pot. So next time you complain about forgetting your fancy pink Himalayan salt at the store, remember, a Mongol might have ridden 3 days for a fistful. One last chuckle for you. Picture your favorite TV chef forced to cook with just mutton, rock salt, and dried cheese during a howling blizzard. 5-star plating, 0 chance of 5-star taste. Outside, the cousin returns, cheeks pink, a handful of snow in his glove. The horses are safe for now, but the storm shows no sign of mercy. You, however, are fed, warm, and drifting gently into a soft, butter-scented half-sleep that only storms can bless you with. You stir awake, barely realizing you drifted off as the storm sang its lullaby above you. Around you, life continues in calm defiance of nature's tantrum. Someone mends a torn boot, a boy nods off mid-sentence, and the old hunter sharpens his knife, each scrape a gentle metronome against the howling wind. The kettle whistles again, more Sute's sigh for everyone. You accept a bowl, its steam wrapping your face in soft, salty clouds. This tea has carried generations through blizzards, raids, and empty stomachs. With each sip, you can almost taste the determination it represents. No matter how harsh the step, this liquid warmth means tomorrow is still possible. As you sip, the eldest woman in the GR shares another storm survival nugget. In the worst winters, when meat ran low and the herd risked starvation, families sometimes turned to wild roots and edible grasses boiled into thin gruel. It was humble and bland, but when your choice is grass soup or nothing, you learn to thank the wind for any mercy at all. Your mind wanders to the old puzzle historians love to argue. Did the Mongols ever truly starve? Some believe their sprawling herds made famine rare. Move your camp, find new pasture, problem solved. Others insist entire clans vanished in storms or bad grazing years, casualties hidden by time and myth. Like many steppe truths, the answer blows away as easily as the snow swirling outside. Your host interrupts your drifting thoughts by plopping a surprise in your lap, a leather pouch of roasted millet mixed with bits of dried mutton fat. This was emergency food for long rides. Toss a handful in your mouth, chew, chase it with butter tea, and you'd survive another day in the saddle. Not gourmet by any measure, But on the steppe, survival outranks flavor every time. The kids giggle as you try a bite, dry, nutty, and unmistakably greasy. You pretend it's delicious, earning a round of approving nods. Meanwhile, the eldest hunter teases that if the storm doesn't break soon, even the toughest warriors here will be forced to snack on the emergency millet. You all laugh, secretly hoping the wind shows mercy before that happens. Now, for something to tickle your imagination, it's said that a Mongol rider could sleep in the saddle during harsh marches, his horse choosing the path while he dreamed of home and hot broth. Modern historians argue fiercely about this. Some call it pure legend, others swear by ancient diaries, hinting at men dozing while crossing entire valleys. Believe what you will, but tonight you envy that ability more than ever. A quick chuckle for you. Imagine explaining to your boss that you fell asleep at work because the horse knew where it was going. Think HR would buy that? The storm's roar dips just enough for a shy tune to rise among the young girls. They hum an old lullaby, words lost in centuries of repetition, but the meaning unchanged. Winds, we hear you. Do your worst. We will wait you out with song, soup, and stubborn smiles. Outside, the clouds prepare another wave of snow. Inside, your belly rumbles once more, proof that even in a howling wilderness, hunger remains the oldest, simplest reminder that you're alive. A final note for Act 2. Storms teach patience better than any sage. No feast is ever wasted when tomorrow's ride depends on tonight's calories, and no wind can blow out the fire of people who know how to laugh over a bowl of salt tea and roasted millet. You settle deeper into your blanket, the storm pounding above you like an ancient drumbeat that promises dawn is only a few pots of tea away. Morning on the steppe doesn't so much arrive as it wrestles the storm into submission. You wake to find the wind still snarling, but softer now, like an old dog tired of barking. The jeer is stuffy with warmth and human breath, and every pot, bowl, and ladle shows the quiet proof of a long night survived. You blink awake to the sight of the hunter's boots by your side. He's back from an early check on the herd. He smells like frost and horse sweat, and in his hand dangles a strip of frozen meat. Breakfast, again. You sit up, wrap your hands around it to thaw it with your own body heat, and chew slowly, feeling every fiber surrender under your teeth. Mongol mornings don't allow for fancy pastries, just dense protein and the knowledge that your muscles are stocked for whatever the wind tries next. As the warmth returns to your limbs, the elder starts a soft recounting of a storm story older than any skull here. Once, they say, a blizzard trapped an entire caravan for 3 weeks on the open plain. With no grass, horses grew weak, and people rationed out tiny lumps of frozen marrow to stay alive. A handful of these survivors became legendary scouts, their resilience whispered about to inspire children who now chase each other around the stove while you gnaw your breakfast. Historians lean in close on tales like this, arguing endlessly. Was it 3 weeks? Was it a different tribe? Was the blizzard real or cautionary myth? Some even dig old bones in forgotten burial mounds, hoping to find evidence of desperate winter starvation. But the storm doesn't care about academia. It only cares that you remember to respect it. Your host's wife sets down a bowl of fresh curds sprinkled with coarse salt. This bright sourness cuts through the fatty meat still wedged between your molars. It's a flavor so honest It yanks your thoughts back to modern life. Your fridge, your supermarket, the neat plastic packaging that pretends food isn't muscle and bone. Here, there's no such illusion. Food is life in its rawest state, eaten with gratitude or not at all. You smile, and the children giggle. Your foreign reaction to simple curds is entertainment enough to distract them from the persistent growl of the wind. One brave child asks if, in your faraway world, you eat so much milk and fat too. You consider telling him about pizza and donuts, but settle for a shrug. How could you explain salted butter tea to a city dweller, or microwave dinners to a child who's never seen an electric light? Here's a quirky footnote. In some rare camps, fermented camel milk made an appearance, thicker than mare's milk, and with a punch strong enough to blur the edges of a brutal day. Some historians love to debate whether camel milk was more potent than mare's arag. Others roll their eyes and say, drink either during a storm, and you won't care about the difference. One more laugh for your sleep-heavy brain. Imagine a trendy cafe serving authentic step storm latte, frothy camel milk with a hint of salt, and a garnish of dried meat. $5 extra for a dash of bone marrow, artisanal style. You'd order one, wouldn't you? Be honest. The jeer settles into a slow, comforting hum. The youngest girl hums a tune you don't know. The hunter pokes the embers back to life. Outside, the storm pouts, forced to admit that for one more morning, it didn't win. Inside, you lean against a pile of fur, stomach content, soul wrapped in ancient calm. Outside, the wind grumbles like an old wolf denied its prey. Inside, the warmth of the jeer settles into your bones until your eyelids feel heavy again. But the quiet rustle of morning chores keeps you tethered to wakefulness. One by one, the family readies for the moment the storm lets them slip back onto the step. The men check saddles and ropes for frays. The women inspect bags of dried meat and hard cheese to see what must be restocked before the next long ride. You watch, wrapped in your blanket, realizing that in this life, survival never takes a day off. A soft voice beside you breaks your thoughts, an elderly aunt offering you a fresh chunk of bortsog, fried dough still warm, its edges glistening with a tiny smear of fresh cream. This is as close to dessert as a storm can allow. You bite in and close your eyes, tasting the faint sweetness that softens the salty butter tea still lingering on your tongue. As you chew, the eldest hunter sits down cross-legged across from you. He speaks slowly, as if telling a ghost story to children who've heard it 100 times. He talks of storms that could strip the skin off a man's face if he wandered too far from his herd, and of riders who trusted the lay of the land so deeply they could feel their way home blindfolded. Historians latch onto these tales with glee, scribbling theories that Mongol survival was less luck and more intimate knowledge of wind currents and grazing routes passed down for centuries. Critics argue, surely no one could read snow like a map. Yet here you are, watching these people do exactly that. Eyes to the sky, ears tuned to the wind's whisper, hands never idle. Halfway through your second bite, a sharp gust rattles the door flap again. You jump a little, drawing a round of laughter from the children. One tiny girl giggles so hard she nearly drops the stone game she's been playing. Her mother tousles her hair and plops her into your lap. Suddenly you're part of this soft, oily, storm-hardened nest. another body adding warmth to the jeer. She hands you a piece of arul, rock cheese once more. You pretend to enjoy it, gnawing politely while your teeth protest. This humble snack, so easy to overlook, is one of the Mongols' quiet superpowers. When fresh food is impossible, dried cheese and dried meat stand guard, unspoiled by time, stubborn against rot and frostbite alike. Here's an odd twist for your mind. Some scholars debate whether these cheeses accidentally introduced travelers to probiotics centuries before modern science. Could storm-bound warriors have owed their iron guts to little more than dried milk? The question lingers like the steam drifting from your bowl. You let out a low chuckle. Imagine your health influencer cousin bragging about probiotic supplements while a 10-year-old nomad chomps rock cheese and laughs at the very idea of a vitamin pill. The storm's voice dips lower, a tired moan now instead of a scream. You catch the quiet shuffle of boots outside. Brave souls venture to check the tether lines again, stomping frost from their fur-lined soles when they duck back in. A gentle promise floats through the jeer. Soon, the sky will break just enough for everyone to ride out and gather what the wind scattered. Another ladle of soup finds its way into your hands, clear broth, flecked with fat, a few strands of borts swirling lazily like dancers. It tastes better now than it did last night, or maybe it's just your tongue deciding this flavor means you belong here, storm and all. One last playful thought for your city-dwelling brain. Tomorrow, when the wind is gone, these people will pack up everything: tent, pot, cheese, bones, laughter, and leave not a footprint worth finding. Try that with your condo. As you finish the last sip, the storm sighs against the felt roof, no longer a tyrant but a tired friend. You, full of ancient food and older stories, settle deeper into the pelts, the storm's final whispers coaxing you toward a dreamless, well-fed doze. The storm's tantrum fades into a restless murmur, more memory than threat now. In this fading hush, the jeer breathes easy. You hear it in the gentle snores of the hunter, in the quiet smack of a child's lips still tasting last night's butter tea, and in the sigh of the wind that for all its fury couldn't breach this circle of warmth. You pull the blanket closer, pressing your cheek to the thick felt. You taste salt on your lips, salt from soup, from sweat, from stories spun over boiling pots and crackling dung fires. This taste anchors you, grounding your drifting mind back here, where time moves like smoke, slow, soft, curling toward sleep. The elders mumble about the next pasture, the next herd to follow, the next storm that might come before the grass grows again. Their words flow over you like another blanket. There is no panic in their tone, only the steady rhythm of a people who know that survival is less about fighting nature and more about listening to her breath. Your eyelids flutter. Somewhere far outside, a horse stamps, shaking off the last stubborn flakes clinging to its mane. Inside, the fire belly sighs. An ember shifts, a twig collapses, a puff of heat escapes and kisses your ankle one final time. You breathe out, long and slow, feeling your ribs rise and fall beneath layers of wool and old stories. You've eaten storm food. You've shared storm laughter. You've sat awake when the wind roared and dreamed softly when it purred. Stay here a little longer. Let your mind slip sideways. Let the snow drift over the felt roof. Let the last drumming gust remind you that you're safe inside your own quiet fortress. Sleep now. The storm has lost. You have not. Good night.